Well, good morning. I was asked to talk about a research project that we conducted here last fall on the feeding of hybrid cereal rye to finishing beef cattle. That's not a feedstuff that's been commonly or typically used to cattle for a number of reasons. There's been challenges sometimes with palatability and performance. So generally speaking, it's not been looked at as a possible feedstuff for livestock. However, with the hybrid technology, it's seen not only just improvements in yield, but also some improvements in terms of ergot alkaloids. So it was time to take another look at that feedstuff and see how it might fit in an integrated crop and livestock system. So what we did here last fall, starting right after the 1st of September, we had 240 head of Angus, predominantly Angus steers on feed. We fed them, the base diet was a typical Midwest corn, distillers, silage, and supplement diet with 60% corn, and then we replaced a third, 2/3, or all of that corn with hybrid rye. And what we found was some of our questions were, well, are they going to eat it, and how well will they perform? We found out that especially in the first third of the feeding period, they ate that feedstuff extremely well. As we went farther into the study, we noticed that the higher inclusion rates of rye plateaued earlier in terms of feed intake, but that 1/3 blend consumed nearly identical amounts of feed as the control diet did. From an ultimate performance standpoint, that followed the same kind of trends that we saw in feed intake, where initially performance was nearly equivalent across all the diets. But as we got farther on, the higher inclusion rates, we started to see those cattle slow down just a bit relative to the controls. But the 1/3 blend was nearly identical in terms of performance, and we saw no differences in terms of carcass. So our final result, the feeding net energy value came in exactly where the book value said it was going to, which as researchers gave us some confidence that what we were doing was matching up with what others were and that it was a fair test, and gives us some confidence in our results. So what our final conclusions were, yeah, we can feed rye to cattle and do so successfully. If we go into, at least based on our work, as we start increasing the amount of rye, we may see some losses in performance and efficiency. So whether or not that's advisable or not is going to depend on the relative price differences between rye and other feedstuffs like corn. At the lower inclusion, that 1/3 rye, 2/3 corn blend, the final performance measures and efficiencies were almost identical. So in terms of that integrated crop livestock system, why we think it's important is it provides another opportunity or another option for a feedstuff for cattle. In South Dakota, livestock is such a huge part of our agricultural business, and one of the niches and one of the reasons we have livestock here in the north is that when we have challenges with feed supply or challenges with crop production, that we have an option to use to market that crop through livestock. And so what we think why our study is important is it showed that that's an option for this crop as well. So it gives producers that are thinking about incorporating rye into their system for all of the other reasons that some of the other folks are going to be talking about, that if we need to, we can also use this as a feedstuff for cattle. So one of the other things we looked at in terms of thinking about all of this as a system, which is really kind of what this research facility is designed to do, is to look at livestock production as part of an integrated system, is what would it look like that if we had a typical South Dakota Corn Belt farm that was half corn, half soybeans, and instead we shifted it to a 1/3 corn, 1/3 soybeans, 1/3 winter rye. How would that fit in with a livestock facility? And what it ended up when we started plugging in some of kind of the yields we might expect in that system, that 2/3 corn, 1/3 rye actually matches up almost identically to what that theoretical farm is going to produce. About 2 bushels of corn for every bushel of rye they produce. And what it can do then, that kind of system would allow a greater production of livestock compared to the 50-50 corn soybean rotation. So we think, from an economic development standpoint in South Dakota, I firmly believe, and I'm not the only one, that one of our untapped resources in the state is greater feeding of livestock. We're here at Beersford today with a pen of cattle or a set of cattle on feed that is We are extremely pleased with their performance and their efficiencies. We think they would be competitive with any set of cattle anywhere in the country. And it's just some proof that we can feed cattle really well here in South Dakota and in the northern plains, and that's an opportunity for some of our small rural communities to add value, bring more jobs, and keep people here by marketing crops through livestock.